Ready to elevate your credit understanding and score? With insider tips and a plan, you can take action to improving your score, which can save thousands in unnecessary finance charges. Let's tackle today's topic with your coach, Credit Christy.
Hey friends, it's Christy, your credit coach. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode. Today we're going to talk about balance transfers. In my most recent episode, we talked about credit card APRs, balances, and I'd mentioned balance transfers. And thank you to a few of my listeners who had reached out and asked for some additional information. So here we go. When you do a balance transfer, you're moving your current balance on your current credit card to a new credit card. So you are essentially opening up new debt. So make sure that this lines up in your life with timing of things that you might be looking to do. So if you're looking to buy a home in the next couple of months, definitely pause, speak with your loan officer, and make sure that this isn't going to mess anything up. Because when you apply for new credit, there is a hard inquiry, and now you have a new debt load. And then you're going to want to keep some things in mind and be very timely with this. My encouraging words would be to find a balance transfer that has the longest period of time you can find, hopefully somewhere between 13 and 18 months at 0%. The longer, the better to help you really have the best and strongest impact of paying down that balance. Now, the mistake that I see some people make when they are starting a balance transfer to a 0% credit card is that they don't move that money immediately. So the minute you get approved for that credit card is when that clock starts ticking. So if you have 13 months, that time frame will be here before you know it. So move that money immediately. Keep in mind that there is usually a balance transfer fee. In most cases, I see it around 3%, but I've also seen that after some initial time period, let's say after the initial 60 days, if you transfer over a balance, that fee might go up to 5%. And now you're paying hundreds of dollars needlessly because you didn't move it expeditiously. And sometimes that 0% might expire in a certain amount of time. They might only give you 30, 60, 90 days from the time that credit card is open to move over any balances from other credit cards. So just make sure you're aware of the small print, which will include the terms and the requirements, and get on it right away. Here's the next thing I'd like to suggest. Don't just make the minimum payments. I want to encourage you to calculate that balance to be able to pay it off before your 0% term ends. Let's use an example of $7,500, and let's say you have 13 months of that 0% term. I'm going to take $7,500 plus that 3% transfer fee. So we've got $7,725, and I'm going to divide it by 13 months. That gives you a monthly payment of $594.23. Let's just call it $595 going towards that credit card payoff each month in order to pay it off in full before that 0% is over and the higher APR kicks in. What an extraordinary opportunity to get out of debt for real, because there's a really good chance that that $7,500 balance has somewhere between a $90 and $150 minimum payment, which, by the way, almost all of it is going towards interest and not even making a dent on your balance. So find a way to kick in that $600 a month, pay that baby off in 13 months, and be done with the debt. Over the last 5 years, according to the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta, APRs have gone up 6.5% on credit cards. And with 48% of Americans that have a credit card carrying a balance forward, that's a tremendous amount of interest being paid over time. Last year, nearly 9% of credit card balances fell into delinquency. What does that mean? That means almost 9% of outstanding credit cards were not able to be paid on a monthly payment. In other words, the credit card holder was no longer able to manage that minimum monthly payment to keep it in good standing. 9%. And I'm afraid that this year, that percentage is going to continue to grow. So what do you do if you don't qualify for a new credit card with a 0% balance transfer? It's likely you wouldn't qualify if your credit scores are low. There's a really good chance your credit scores are low because your credit card is maxed or nearly maxed out. If that's the case, I want to encourage you, find a way to pay that credit card balance down. When it's maxed or nearly maxed, or quite honestly, just over 30% of your limit, that higher balance is not only going to cost you in interest owed each month on that credit card, but it also costs you with a credit score that is suffering or lower because you have that higher debt utilization on your credit card. So if you don't qualify for a 0% balance transfer new credit card, see if your creditor could work with you for just a temporary time. Ask them to reduce your APR so that more of your payment can go towards paying off your debt. Explain your situation. If you are stretched to the gild, if you lost your job, if you have some unexpected debt that came your way, and now your credit card is maxed out because you didn't have an emergency savings, communicate with your creditor. There's no guarantee that they'll work with you. But a lot of times, if you make that effort and have that conversation and ask for some help, a lot of times it can happen. With the crazy costs right now due to inflation and our economy moving more towards a flat or even declining state, there's going to be more people in this situation. And here's the truth. Credit card companies have the largest margin right now than they've ever had in the past. What does that mean? The margin is the profit margin that credit card companies get. So their interest rates are based off of prime plus their margin, or the extra that they earn and make from you borrowing money and keeping a balance. They love it when you have a big balance because that's where they make their money, is the interest payment that you're making. But the cost of carrying that debt can be to the tune of hundreds and hundreds of dollars a month. So I would encourage you, if you are facing a squeeze, if you're feeling that things are getting a little tight, I would encourage you to perhaps look at that balance transfer of 0% sooner rather than later. Because the higher that balance gets on your credit card, the more it can hurt your credit score. If your credit score is below the threshold of what that creditor feels is a comfortable risk level for them, they may not extend that new credit card. And here is something I want to make sure you hear. If you are going to do a balance transfer, I want to encourage you not only to work on calculating the required payment to pay that baby off at the end of that 0% term, but make sure you're not going back to that original credit card and still using it the way you were. In other words, all you're doing then is moving over debt from one credit card to another without maybe addressing or changing your everyday spending. So the last thing I want to see happen is you start a new credit card only now to have two growing balances rather than just one maxed out credit card. Please don't do that. If and when you get that 0% credit card, calculate that time period for the 0% and divide your balance by that. And that's the monthly payments you're going to make. And then don't go back and use that original credit card anymore, unless you are able to pay it off in full because you're just putting gas and groceries on it. I have seen too many times where somebody now has thousands of dollars freed up on their credit card, and the next thing you know, they're out spending money to make their emotions feel a little bit better. And friends, that's just going to get you deeper in debt. And I've seen people literally face depression because they're buried in debt and then go out and spend more money to get them deeper in debt. That certainly doesn't help. So I want to encourage you to pay attention to your spending. I know for me, I've had to walk into a store with cash and say, this is all I have for this grocery run. And then I'm a lot more frugal with my choices, with what I put in my cart. If you need to do a little splurge spending to feel a little bit better, perhaps take some cash in with you, leave the credit cards at home and say, okay, today I have $30 to spend and that's it, because that's what I've got in my wallet. It's just too easy to keep putting things in the cart and swiping that credit card without putting too much thought into how it's going to get paid off later. If you have a growing balance on your credit card, unfortunately, you're not alone. You're one of the 48% of Americans that aren't in a position to pay it off in full. But that doesn't mean that you can't get there. I believe in you and I know you've got this. So consider following a household budget. Pay attention to where you're spending. Maybe consider shopping at different places. I had to change our grocery store because the place I was going to out of convenience that was just up the road is 2 or 3 times the amount of shopping at Aldi. So I've moved where I'm spending my grocery money, and it's making a tremendous difference on that monthly part of the budget. So where else might you be able to cut? Even if it's just temporarily, to help get us through this moment in time. The Federal Reserve will be meeting again in September, and there's a good chance that they might start reducing interest rates. If not in September when they meet next, then possibly in December. And that'll be a nice change over these last couple of years of increasing interest rates. It'll make a difference on how much of your minimum monthly payment is going towards interest. But work super hard to get those credit card balances down. And if you're going to consider a 0% balance transfer, make sure you understand the terms. What is the transfer fee? How long is the 0%? And what happens if you go over your limit, you make a late payment, you do a cash advance? And what happens to that balance that's remaining at the end of that 0% when it comes to now having a true APR? What are you looking at for the terms then? Well, friends, if you have any questions, reach out to me at questions@creditchristie.com. And until next time, my friends, stay well.
Subscribe now and share with a friend to stay in the loop for new credit content and insider tips to maximize your credit knowledge. And follow Credit Christie on Instagram.